Mantras of our Divine Mother. Our Divine Mother says, keep your aspiration ardent and sincere, and never forget that you are the child of the Divine. It will prevent you from doing anything unworthy of the Divine children. With my love and blessings, says our Divine Mother. Words of our Divine Mother taken from the collective works of our Divine Mother, Question and Answers, Volume 3, page 150, topic Psychic Presence and Psychic Being. Our Divine Mother says, with regard to the evolution upwards, it is more correct to speak of the psychic presence than the psychic being. For it is the psychic presence which little by little becomes the psychic being. In each evolving form there is this presence, but it is not individualized. It is something which is capable of growth and follows the moment of the evolution. It is not a descent of the involution from above. It is formed progressively round the spark of the divine consciousness, which is meant to be the center of the growing being, which becomes the psychic being when it is at last individualized. Our Divine Mother says, it is this spark that is permanent and gathers round itself all sorts of elements for the formation of that individuality. The true psychic being is formed only when the psychic personality is fully grown, fully built up round the eternal divine spark. It attains its culmination, its total fulfillment, if and when it unites with a being or personality from above, says our Divine Mother. Next topic, taken from the collective works of our Divine Mother, Question and Answers, Volume 3, page 143, topic Difficulties in Integral Yoga. Our Divine Mother says the nature of your difficulty indicates the nature of the victory you will gain, the victory you will exemplify in Integral Yoga. Thus, if there is a persistent selfishness, it points to a realization of universality. It points to a realization of universality as your most prominent achievement in the future. And when selfishness is there, you have also the power to reverse this very difficulty into its opposite, a victory of utter wideness. Our Divine Mother says, when you have something to realize, you will have in you just the characteristic which is the contradiction of that something. Face to face with the defect, the difficulty, and you say, oh, I am like that, how awful it is. But you ought to see the truth of the situation. Say to yourself, my difficulty shows me clearly what I have ultimately to represent. to reach the absolute negation of it, the quality at the other pole. This is my mission. Our Divine Mother says, even in ordinary life, we have sometimes the experience of contraries. He who is very timid and has no courage in front of circumstances proves capable of bearing the most. To one who has the aspiration for the divine, the difficulty which is always before him is the door by which he will attain God in his own individual manner. It is his particular path towards the divine realization. There is also the fact that if somebody has 100 difficulties, it means he will have a tremendous realization, provided, of course, there are in him patience and endurance, and he keeps the aspiring flame of Agni burning against those defects. And remember, the grace of the divine is generally proportioned to your difficulties, says our Divine Mother. Next topic is about ego, and this is taken from the collective works of our Divine Mother, Volume 1, Part 3, Question and Answers, page 240. Our Divine Mother says, egoism is relatively easy thing to correct because everyone knows what it is. It is easy to discover, easy to correct if one truly wants to do it and is bent on it. But the ego is much more difficult to seize because, in fact, to realize what the ego is, one must already be out of it. Otherwise, one cannot find it out. Our Divine Mother says you are wholly molded from it, from head to foot, from the outermost to the innermost, from the physical to the spiritual. You are steeped in ego. It is mixed with everything, and you are not aware of what it is. You must have already conquered it, come out of it, freed yourself from it, at least partially, at least in some little corner of your being, somewhere, in order to realize what the ego is. Our Divine Mother says the ego is what helps us to individualize ourselves and what prevents us from becoming divine. The ego is what helps us to individualize ourselves and prevents us from becoming divine. It is like that. Put that together and you will find the ego. Our Divine Mother says, without the ego, as the world is organized, there would be no individual. And with the ego, the world cannot become divine. It would be logical to conclude, well, let us first of all become conscious individuals, then we shall send away the ego and become the divine. Only when we have become conscious individuals, we have grown so accustomed to living with our ego that we are no longer able to discern it, and much labor is needed to become aware of its presence. Our Divine Mother says, on the other hand, everyone knows what egoism is. When you want to pull everything towards you and other people do not interest you, that is called egoism. When you put yourself at the center of the universe and all things exist only in relation to you, that is egoism. But it is very obvious. You must be blind not to see that one is egoistic. Everybody is a little egoistic, more or less, and at least a certain proportion of egoism is normally acceptable. But even in ordinary life, when one is little too egoistic, well, one receives knock on the nose. Because since everyone is egoistic, no one much likes egoism in others. Our Divine Mother says, it is taken for granted. It is part of public morality. Yes, one must be a little bit egoistic, not too much. So, it is not conspicuous. On the other hand, nobody speaks of the ego because nobody knows it. It is such an intimate companion that one does not even recognize its existence, and yet so long as it is there, one will never have the divine consciousness. The ego is what one makes one conscious of being separate from others. If there were no ego, you would not perceive that you are a person separate from others. Our Divine Mother says, you would have the impression that you are a small part of a whole, a very small part of a great whole. On the other hand, every one of you is most certainly quite conscious of being a separate person. Well, it is the ego that gives you this impression. As long as you are conscious in this way, it means that you have an ego. When you begin to be aware that everything is yourself and that this is only a very small point in the midst of thousands and thousands of other points of the same person, that you are everywhere, when you feel that you are yourself in everything and that there is no separation, then you know that you are on the way towards having no more ego. Our Divine Mother says, there even comes a time when it is impossible to conceive oneself and say, it is not I, for even to express it in this way, to say that all is you and that you are all, or that you are the divine, or that divine is you, proves that something still remains. Our Divine Mother says there is a moment that this happens in a flash and can hardly stay. When it is all that thinks, it is all that knows, it is the all that feels, it is the all that lives. There is not even the impression that you have reached that point. Then it is all right. But until then, it is shown that there is still a little remnant of ego somewhere. Usually, it is the part which looks on, the witness that looks on. So, do not assert that you have no more ego. It is not accurate. Say, you are on the way towards having no more ego. That is the correct thing to say. Our Divine Mother says, I do not believe that it has happened to you, has it? Not yet. And yet it is indispensable. If you truly intend to know what the supramental is, if you are a candidate for the supermanhood, you must resolve to dispense with your ego, to go beyond it. For as long as you keep it with you, the supermind will be for you something unknown and inaccessible. But if through effort, through discipline, through progressive mastery, you surmount your ego and go beyond it, even if only in the tiniest part of your being, this thing acts like the opening of a small window somewhere. And by looking carefully through the window, you will be able to glimpse the supermind. And that is a promise. Our Divine Mother says, when you glimpse, you find it so beautiful that you immediately want to get rid of all the rest of the ego. Our Divine Mother says, please note that I am not saying that you must be totally free from all ego in order to have a glimpse of the supramental. For then there would be something most almost impossible. No, to be free from ego, just a little bit, somewhere in some corner of your being, even a little corner, only a little corner of the mind. If it is the mind and the vital, it is well and good. But if by chance, not by chance, or if by repeated efforts you have entered into contact with your psychic being, then the door is wide open. Through the psychic, you can suddenly have a very clear and beautiful vision of what the supermind is. Only a vision, not a realization. That is the great way out. But even without going so far as this beautiful realization, the psychic realization, if you succeed in liberating some part of your mind or your vital, that makes a kind of a hole in the door, a keyhole. Through this keyhole, you have a glimpse, just a glimpse, and that is already very attractive, very interesting, says our divine mother. Next topic, stepping back, taken from page 116. Our Divine Mother says, most of you live on the surface of your being, exposed to the touch of external influences. You live almost projected, as it were, outside your own body. And when you meet some unpleasant being, similarly projected, you get upset. The whole trouble arises out of you not being accustomed to stepping back. You must always step back into yourself. Learn to go deep within. Step back and you will be safe. Our Divine Mother says, do not lend yourself to the superficial forces which move in the outside world. Even if you are in a hurry to do something, step back for a while and you will discover, to your surprise, how much sooner and with what greater success your work can be done. If someone is angry with you, do not get caught up in his vibration, but simply step back, and his anger, finding no support or response, will vanish. Always keep your peace. Resist all temptation to lose it. Never decide anything without stepping back. Never speak a word without stepping back. Never throw yourself into action without stepping back. Our Divine Mother says, all that belongs to the ordinary world is impermanent and fugitive. So there is nothing in it worth getting upset about. What is lasting, eternal, immortal, and infinite, that indeed is worth having, worth conquering, worth possessing. It is the divine light, divine love, divine life. It is also supreme peace, perfect joy, and all mastery upon earth, with the complete manifestation as the crowning. When you get the sense of the reality of things, when you get the sense of the relativity of things, then whatever happens, you can step back and look. You can remain quiet and call on the divine force and wait for an answer. Then you will know exactly what to do. Remember, therefore, that you cannot receive the answer before you are peaceful. Practice that inner peace, make at least a small beginning, and go on in your practice until it becomes a habit, says our Divine Mother. Next topic, prayer and calling the divine, page 221. Our Divine Mother says, the whole of our life should be a prayer offered to the divine. Integral prayer is the whole being is concentrated in a single prayer to the divine. All sincere prayers are granted, but it takes some time to realize it materially. All sincere prayers are granted, every call is answered. Sincere calls surely are heard and receive an answer. Let us pray with all our heart that the divine work must be accomplished. We pray that the divine should teach us evermore, enlighten us more and more, dispel our ignorance, illumine our minds. It is never in vain that an ardent and sincere prayer is addressed to the divine's grace. The supremest divine knowledge and perfect unity, at each moment of the day, let us call to Him so that we may be nothing else than Himself.
Intégralement, elle est mon bonheur et ma loi.
Nothing is difficult for those who call sincerely the divine.
May thy will be integrally done, O Lord. It is my happiness and my law.